We have Richard Appleby with us, and he's going to present I'm In. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. All right, so this is probably the least serious talk of the conference. I don't expect anyone to be going back to their boss tonight and saying I learned something amazing in this talk. So let's just have a bit of fun. I'm going to talk about 4 films, and I'm just going to get straight into it. So the first film I'm going to talk about is Hackers, released in 1995. I've had a special request to find out how many people here have actually seen Hackers. Oh, I reckon that's less than 50%. Spoiler warning. There's going to be some spoilers in here and for a few other films as well. So I'm going to plot summarize it real quick. This guy is Dade Murphy. He's recently been got off of his probation, 7-year probation for hacking as an 11-year-old, and he's moved to New York City. He meets a bunch of people who he needs to prove he's an elite hacker to, and one of those people is also trying to prove the fact that he's an elite hacker, and he's broken into the Gibson, you've probably heard that one before, and pulled out a garbage file. Unfortunately, only halfway through his copying of the garbage file, his mum turns off his computer, and so he's only got half of it. The bad guy in this film, called The Plague, happens to be the system administrator of the company he was stealing the garbage file from, and he's noticed this intrusion. So he gets quite upset about this because it turns out that garbage file that was copied is where he's storing his secret code to steal all the money. So he writes a virus and blames it on the hackers, and the virus is supposed to sink some ships. So that sets the Secret Service off after the hackers, and in order to prevent the Secret Service from harassing all of their friends, they decide to do lots of kind of crazy hijink hacks on the Secret Service. At the same time, they need to reverse engineer the half of a garbage file that they have, so an amazing montage of reverse engineering. They manage to do that, and naturally what you do after that is go rollerblading. So they rollerblade down to some public payphones, call all of their hacker friends, hit the Gibson, which you can see here represented as a whole bunch of blocks, the red bits of the hackers. They collect a whole bunch of hackers from all over the world to slow down the Gibson so that they've got time to navigate a file system that looks like a city, find the garbage file, take over the airwaves, and tell the world how bad this bad guy is. So there's a plot summary of Hackers. Now, this is the supercomputer. This is the Gibson. It has a giant screen in the middle of the server room. These two guys are looking at it and they're watching a login. I think password security in 1995 may have been a little bit different, because this is the password. At no point in this film does anyone refer to the user by a username. It's always just referred to by their password. So you're wondering, how did this hacker get in? How did he guess this amazing password? Well, used exactly the same techniques as we use today. But instead of using RockU, they've used this password list. Very effective. But not all of Hackers is completely ridiculous. This is young Dade as an 11-year-old, and he, according to the film, crashed 1,507 systems in 1998. Quite an achievement. But this is actually based on a real guy. This is Robert Morris. He wasn't 11 when he did it, he was 23, but in 1998 he released a worm called the Morris worm and crashed 6,000 to 10,000 systems. So they based it in reality, and that continues throughout the film. This is a character called Serial Killer. That's his handle, but his real name in the film, his character's name, is Emmanuel Goldstein. But where did he get his name from? He got it from this box of cereal, this Captain Crunch box of cereal. Why is this box of cereal significant? Because it came with this toy whistle, and this toy whistle happens to emit a 2600 hertz tone. This is a tone that can be used in the phone system at the time in order to disconnect calls, and that inspired this magazine, 2600 magazine. You may have heard of it. The guy that started the magazine, his name's Eric Corley, but his handle was Emmanuel Goldstein. A complete circle. And this bit of hacking, he's making a long-distance phone call, and the operator asked him to put some coins into the machine, and instead he just plays some coins, recorded previously, dropping into the machine, and makes his long-distance phone call. This is a legitimate technique, not always done with a recorder. There's a thing called a red box. Back in the day, you could build it yourself. It emitted the tones that represented the coins dropping into the machine, and you just press buttons and put coins in. So this actually happened. This is Dave proving to his friends that he's elite, and they're trying to assess his elite status by pulling out books of different colours. He identifies the colours of the books and the titles because he is elite and he's read them all, and this is an actual series of books. This is called the Rainbow Series, released by the United States government. It's all the security standards and guidelines before Google, because Google didn't exist, before the internet, because the internet kind of almost didn't exist. This was how hackers had to learn how to do stuff. The knowledge was power, and the ability to read the books was really important. The hacking scene, where all of the hackers hacked the Gibson, has a whole bunch of graphics pointed up on it, and it seems completely ridiculous. There's this screen up here, I want a cookie, give me a cookie now. I'm like, why is this there? This is an actual DOS virus. In here we can see it's infected the format command, so now instead of formatting stuff when you type format, it just prints out give me a cookie, and it won't go away until you type cookie. You will be very happy. This also does the annoying terminal beep every time it prints one of those strings, so I decided not to run it here. And similarly, there's another screen up there, arf, we've got you. That came from an actual real piece of malware that deleted your file systems, and it had that phrase in there as well. So hackers, while it used the stylized visuals flying through cities to get code over the realism, it really was rooted in real hacks and real people. The people who wrote the script had a lot of consultation with actual hackers at the time. It really is a homage to hacker identity and has used pop culture and really elevated form hacking and made it a little bit more glamorous than it probably should be. So let's talk about the next film. I can tell people have seen this one. All right, quick plot summary. Aliens are coming, so the TVs don't work. And the TVs don't work because there's something wrong with the satellite feed. Turns out there's a binary code in the satellite feed. Almost everyone prints out their binary, right? That binary code apparently is a countdown. So our amazing hacker, his name's David Levenstein, takes his countdown to the president, manages to save the president from the White House as it gets blown up, and they end up in Area 51, where it turns out they've had one of these alien spaceships for the past 40 years or so. But it's only just turned on. Luckily, he's managed to engineer a virus to turn the shields on the spaceship off, flies up to the spaceship, talks to it, furiously types in some code, uploads the virus to the spaceship, throws up a Jolly Roger on their screens for no apparent reason, and then nukes them, thus saving the world. So I bet you want to see what an alien virus looks like. Well, here it is. It's a lot of things. It looks like there's a bit of assembler in there. Could be a bit of Python, could be a bit of JavaScript, could be a lot of random words. But my favourite bit are these numbers, where someone has clearly just bashed the number O on the keyboard. Just consecutive numbers everywhere. And the Jolly Roger code, bet you'd like to see how to throw up a Jolly Roger on an alien spaceship. There you go. You just load it. But maybe this is doing him a disservice, because as you can see in the top corner here, before he did this, he had to select 127,000 arguments. So maybe it was harder than it looked. But it's okay. It's okay. One of the screenwriters explained what's going on. It was a binary code, and all he did was flip the ones and zeros. I'm like, how easy is this? I'm going to try it. So I built a web server with an API. I turn the shields on, I turn the shields off, and then, here we go, burp, plug in. intercept the request. Let's flip the bits and see what happens. There's the bits flipped, no more status on, just ASCII stuff. It didn't work. I was as surprised as you guys, I really was. But then I remembered this. I can't read this meme out because if you read it out, it ruins it. But it gave me an idea. Here's my API. Now we turn the shields on with a 1. Now we flip ASCII character 1 into ASCII character 0. Yes! It works! They were right all along. Alright, but I want to give David Levinson some credit here because he really has done an amazing job. This is the timeline for Independence Day. Somewhere after 9 o'clock, it seems he arrives a bit late at work that day, he gets a message to say, look, there's something wrong with the satellites. Sometime around lunchtime, he's figured out that there's some kind of binary code in there, printed it out, and worked out that it's a countdown. So in less than 1 day, he solved the satellite problem. The next day, he ends up at Area 51, sees this spacecraft for the first time, loses hope, gets outrageously drunk, so drunk that he's falling down. I'm being generous here. In the film, July 4th flashes up and then this scene happens. So I'm going to assume that it happened at 12:01, okay, midnight, when he's outrageously drunk. While he's drunk, he decides that he needs to write a virus in order to save the day. Writes the virus. I'm going to guess this happens somewhere before 3 a.m. Why? Because at 3:10, according to this watch, he was at a wedding, being a witness. And at dawn, he launched. So it wasn't 3:10 in the afternoon, it must have been 3:10 in the morning, and he did the virus demonstration before that, which means he did the entire thing in less than 3 hours. What a champ. So yeah, Independence Day, completely implausible hacking. I did have a slide in here originally where I kind of defended it, and I threw it out because it was impossible. There's nonsense code and interfaces everywhere. There's an unrealistic timeline, but the plot device really works. It's a really entertaining movie. All right, Matrix Reloaded. This was a turning point, I feel. So we don't need the whole plot here because there's only really one hacking scene in it, and I'm going to show you the hacking scene, but I'm going to set it up first. So in this, Trinity has just found out that a group that was supposed to take down a power station has failed to do so. And they really need it done right now. So she has 314 seconds to get in there and shut down a power station. She jumps into the power station off of the nearby building on a motorcycle, explodes it, and gets in. And let's see what happens next.
Operator.
I'm in.
Keep moving, 65th floor. One minute.
Come on. Come on. Please.
All good. So let's have a look at what she did. She ran Nmap. It's a question as why she ran Nmap, but we'll get to that in a sec. So Nmap was an actual real tool. If you didn't know that, that is legit. And this was the first time, especially for me, I'd ever seen someone use a real tool in a hacking movie. So I thought that was pretty good. But I looked a bit closer, and it turns out it's Nmap version 2.54. And we can see that Nmap 2.53 was released in 2000, and Nmap 3 was released in 2002. And this movie is set in approximately the year 2001. So it kind of fits. That was slightly impressive. We see that it's not all completely impressive though. There's a spelling error in the returned bit of Nmap, so someone's fiddled there. But also there's the question of why anyone bothered to run Nmap on a single IP address to find a service that they probably knew was there on the port that it normally runs on. Especially if you see that switch, they just looked at all the default ports, so they probably scanned like 1,000 of them or something like that. They also used an exploit that called SSH nuke, and there's a screenshot there in the background. Maybe she typed it in then, maybe she typed it in an assembler, maybe she edited the assembler afterwards. It's hard to tell. But SSH nuke is not an actual exploit. It doesn't exist. But she uses it here to change a root password, and we can see that exploiting SSH v1, CRC32, this turns out to be an actual exploit, again from 2001, so actually period correct. And given the movie was probably filmed in 2002, it's actually like a pretty good effort out there. And we can see that the exploit actually covers what the CVE covers, so that's pretty impressive. She changes the root password here to Zion. If you remember, Zion is the city of the humans in the film. I probably would have changed it to like A or something, because the whole point was I had to do this really quickly. But Zion wanted, and then we get some more Hollywood magic with a password pop-up, which obviously wouldn't exist. And then she types in the disable nodes command, clearly pressing that H key here, manages to type command with no H's in it, and saves the day. So this one was grounded in real exploits, so that was really good, and represented a shift in portrayal. You could actually show someone doing something properly. And that was something that continued in with Black Hat in 2015. Now this I assume most people have not seen, because this film did very badly at the box office. It did so badly it was pulled from a release from a whole bunch of theatres. And the director later apologised, saying, "We hadn't really finished the script yet." He actually re-released, I think this year or last year, there's a director's cut which moves a whole bunch of stuff around. I'm not going to spoiler the plot on this one, but basically this guy in the picture here gets broken out of prison to help track down a hacker. But in the technical community, it was actually really well received in terms of what it got right. We'll see. Perhaps it was well received because they didn't shy away from hex dumps. This is a guy presenting to high-level people like the CIA and the upper levels of defense. And he doesn't bring a PowerPoint presentation. No, he just uses the output from his debugger to prove what he's doing. I don't suggest doing this. I suggest conveying your information slightly more easily. There's hex dumps all over the place. Some of them are so good that we can actually pull the text out of them and see what's in there. So we've reverse engineered this one, and we can see some assembler, have a look at it. We can even turn it into a C function, and that's when we get disappointed. Like, why is he looking at this particular function that all it seems to do is multiply one of its arguments by a constant? This is probably not the bit of code that we need to be looking at. Similarly here, we've got a DLL entry point and the start of a function, but there's nothing interesting in here. The interesting bits in here, can we see these bits? These are the bits that are getting called to find out what to do with some file, but these are left behind. And then there's this bit. Here we've got a Python script with, for some reason, a -f on the end of the pi. No idea. And they're running on a memory dump. This memory dump he obtained by going into a melted down nuclear reactor in a hazmat suit and pulling the memory out of a machine that was in there. And then they're searching for this IP address, and we can see, oh, they've got a partial match on the IP address here. I don't know how they managed to match on the other two hits there. There doesn't seem to be anything that looks at all like an IP address, so I don't know how you get a hit on that. But here's another shot from a different binary somewhere else in the film. and there's the IP address they were looking for. So really, you didn't need to go into a nuclear reactor in order to find this IP address. You just could have looked in the binary that you had sitting there on your desktop the entire time. And it does some stuff super weirdly. Like, here's some Python that is just syntactically incorrect. Like, there was no reason to make this syntactically. You could have run it normally. Here's someone failing to use the copy command. This is our elite hacker, the main character of the movie. This is obviously intentional missing out of a space here. Like, it is here he fails to use the right command. He gets the command right, but then he just enters his message into the command prompt. And then when someone writes back, he just types his handle in the command prompt. And here we have a binary that they had managed to pull off something that has source code comments in it. Like, this would just never happen. So it's intentionally weird the way they broke some stuff. This one gets a bit pedantic, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. This is the classic malicious USB drive. So the setup here is the USB drive has been delivered to a bank, and the security guard at the front desk has plugged this in order to print out the document for the lady who's asking for it. So he plugs the USB drive in and it auto runs, and we get a pop-up on our hero hacker's computer. But we get a blank command prompt pop-up, and then he types his netcat command, so he can do the listening for the thing that's already happened. Then he gets his shell, and he decides to launch a browser. So he's got his reverse shell, and he launches a browser which somehow manages to pop up on his machine instead of on the machine that it's supposed to be running on. And then this security guard at the front desk of a bank somehow has unauthenticated access to all financial transactions within the bank. So he can just transfer funds wherever he wants. Perfect. All right, this is the last one. This is the end of the talk. And this one's a doozy. This is, I'm going to call it a Linux system. Does anyone want to argue with me? Does anyone recognize this as not a Linux system? Okay, good. On this Linux system, we've got a USB drive, and this is the target of an auto run. Now, this auto run is for a Windows system. Anyone going to argue with that? So we've got some incompatibilities here. So Windows. Now, this magic number, this is the start of, believe it or not, an Apple binary. Yeah, this is 64-bit Mac O. We have 3 levels of failure, all in one. It gets better. Here's some text. In the ASCII here, we can see some text. It looks a bit weird, but what looks even weirder is it doesn't match the hex. They're definitely all zeros, and that's definitely text. And if you look at this string, it kind of looks like it might be words, but you can't read it. But if you read it in reverse, you get a phrase. That's a kind of weird phrase to find in your malicious binary. So I Googled it. Oh, an extract from a book. What book could possibly be in this malicious binary? It's called The Story of O. Written in 1954, originally in French and translated into English, it has been described as 50 Shades of Grey before 50 Shades of Grey. So that's Black Hat. A big thanks to Silent Grid for the guys there for enduring an early presentation of this. It was really good putting it out to you guys and getting your feedback, so thank you very much. And I'm just going to leave you with my favourite and most representative scene from a movie of pen testing and hacking in general. This is from the original Matrix, and we call this one Waiting for Creds. Thank you.
Awesome presentation. Thank you for that, Richard. Does anyone have any questions?
There better not be questions.
Do you know him?
No, I don't know. No questions from the back, guys.
I'll just yell out.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the presentation. I missed the start though. Were you talking about swordfish at the start? I'm just wondering when the sword.
I skipped short swordfish, sorry. Maybe if I do another one, a 55-minute one, I can add in.
Next year.
Yeah, sure. Anyone else?
Anybody else? Awesome. Thank you again. That was fantastic.